That's a pretty interesting story as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got a little thing on it here.
Oh, good. Want to bet?
Welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I am your host, Brendan Trainor. My co-host, Leland Faegre.
Beautiful in the biggest little city.
Yes,
this morning.
After the overcast and precipitation of the last couple
of
days.
And all the snow. We got a foot of snow or more.
We got a little dusting here. Yeah,
really nice.
The fact is that we have some good news today for the first time in a while. There's the first suggestion that there could be some light at the end of the COVID-19 tunnel.
Is there?
Yes. Well, we hope so, because we hope when a little light is shed, the cockroaches will scurry. But anyway,
You're talking about the numbers?
Yeah, the numbers suggest that a new model, and of course the whole thing about these models is we don't really know what the denominator is. We know the numerator is the number of people who died. We don't know the denominator, and we don't really even know the numerator because, we're accusing China of underreporting deaths and everything, but
which they are.
Well, they may be, but the fact is that the way different countries, and even our country, counts deaths during a pandemic is changing. It's not set in stone.
That's an
for example, even America, we don't test those who die at home.
Right.
We don't know how many of those were infected. Mm-hmm. We only test people in the hospital that have, that are being tested there and who pass away. So,
and they have underlying conditions in many cases.
Most cases, in most cases. So, Dr. Ron Paul put out a 5-minute extra video this morning. I don't know whether you saw it.
I didn't see it. No.
He's calling for allowing church worship on Easter Sunday and other celebrations. Mm-hmm. And Ammon Bundy. You all know the Bundy family.
Yeah.
Ammon Bundy.
He's stirring things up there.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he's calling for...
I'm looking for a secession movement out of Idaho. That's the way it looks.
You mean there isn't one already?
Well, I mean, there is an ongoing one for sure. Yeah.
So he's calling for, the same thing under the First Amendment, the right to peacefully assemble.
And doesn't he cite the World Health Organization in his little...
I think so. Yeah, I didn't. Maybe I didn't read that.
In his little statement, it came from. Oh no, it came from somebody he's aligned with.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Okay. So we'll see. Things are happening in the Bay Area. On the left side, there are websites springing up to organize rent strikes and that sort of thing.
I thought they already had rent strikes in the Bay Area.
Well, they just don't pay, but that's different from an organized strike.
Okay.
But anyway, so the things the natives are starting to get restless, which is certainly understandable with all the different views that we're getting constantly from the media and the politicians and the bureaucrats.
But you didn't give our listeners who are listening around the world the numbers, the actual numbers from the University of Washington's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation.
You mean they're claiming now 60,000 may die before...
From their original suggestion of 2.2 million.
Yes.
Just a wee bit off.
Well,
I mean, you're going to mess something up. That's about as far as you can go.
And, we've talked about Dr. Fauci, and bless his heart, as they say in the South.
Uh-huh.
He is a bureaucrat.
We don't say it here on Talking Truth to Power.
He is a bureaucrat, and he is...
he loves Hillary.
He loves Hillary. Yeah. And he's vaccine happy.
Uh-huh.
That's the only thing that will satisfy Dr. Fauci is the vaccine or a drug that has entered through all the strict FDA protocols and been officially stamped approved. Nothing else will work for him. So,
well, they don't understand money, and they don't understand, the foundations of economics, and so that's all they think about. They can't go in that direction because they're incapable of it.
Right. Yeah. That's why they shouldn't be turning over national policy to the doctors, just like you shouldn't completely turn over war to the generals.
But it's a lovely thing, these afternoon briefings with them standing, sort of in queue for their opportunities to speak to the issue of medicine. But Trump is there, at the podium and directing. And it's a wonderful thing to see. It's a magnificent thing to see.
Yeah, we're suggesting some of these reporters who cover these White House briefings should get hazard pay.
I think they are getting hazard pay. Let's be honest about it. Why would they do that? Why would they subject themselves to Trump's abuse, as they would describe it, if they weren't getting extra money for it? Did you see the one, the Fox reporter, was it Sunday night? And she cited inspector generals from 2 departments, and guess what? It turned out that these IGs were appointed during the Obama era.
Oh,
and she didn't even mention
what
it.
a surprise.
Yeah. And of course, Trump just literally slapped her for that. I mean, I was embarrassed for her, actually. And I saw her the next morning, and I thought, how did she sleep after that, Hazard pay.
Hazard pay.
Yeah, that's how she slept.
So, there's some hope, and we certainly could use it. We don't know when these checks are actually going to arrive. According to Secretary of Treasury Munchin, the check should be in the mail and arriving by the end of next week, I think. That's what he said.
It's something like that, yeah. And then the next wave, it's the federal unemployment extensions. Those are the next phase of it, yeah. And I think you have to start in your bank if you expect to be on the receiving end of federal money through the unemployment offices of your individual states.
Yeah, I see advertisements that you could, internet ads, that here in Nevada you could get possibly $600 extra unemployment from the feds. Yeah. So, we'll see.
Yeah, well, it's just free money. So...
Yeah, but as Thomas Massey said, that's the cheese in the trap.
That's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah. Because let's face it, I mean, he did the math, and according to Massey, this is going to put every American family $60,000 further into debt with the national debt as we socialize all these business losses.
Unless we can go back to work sooner.
Yes.
And I'm expecting that, actually.
Yeah, okay.
I think they're going to use the antibody mantra to get us off of our sofas and back in.
And there are antibody therapies trying to come online.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't need the vaccine, Dr. Fauci.
Right.
Ready for a live game of Clue? For nearly 30 years, Funtime Theaters held private and monthly dinner murder mysteries. Each night is different.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now, back to the show.
Hey, and welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Brendan Trainor. My co-host is Leland Faegre. And we have a new segment in the show. It's called Jews in the News.
Jews in the News. And we feel pretty good about it because the place is kind of quiet. I had preferred parking this morning.
Yes,
it's pretty nice.
I see that, yeah. So while Americans lost their jobs and got sick from COVID-19 in the last few weeks, several Jews made the news doing what they just got to do. First one was William Ackman. Remember him, as reported in the New York Post, March 30th?
How can I forget?
On a 28-minute speech on CNBC, he caused the entire stock market to collapse. And then he made $2 billion that night buying the stocks low.
He shorted it, I think, in advance of the interview.
Yeah, and then, yep. Mm-hmm. So he especially was attacking the Hilton stocks, which he had a lot of, but he said, hell is coming. The stocks are going to zero. We're going to go through a depression. Millions of people will die. As many as 1 million Americans will die, describing the coronavirus threat. And so Hilton is going to zero, and along with every other hotel company. And immediately after that rant on CNBC, the stocks market crashed. And you know, the point is that...
The market is very sensitive
yes.
to these kinds of things.
Yeah. And, you know, he pulled the same stunt in 2009.
Oh, yeah, no, he's done this before.
Yep, so another...
But you see, a savvy investor would know better and would either be out of the market, because it was in advance. You know, the interview was acknowledged to be coming up.
Right.
You know, so there was a lot of expectation about his statement. And, you know, they should have played it cool. But, you know, a lot of investors are not that savvy, and so they get caught up in these things. And it's very difficult to watch, actually.
Right. And then we had the incident of David Geffen, the Jewish music oligarch whose estimated worth is $8 billion, who tweeted how he was enjoying social distancing, cruising in the Caribbean on his $590 million yacht.
Now, how does he get to a post office out there?
He tweeted it. That's all. He just tweeted it.
I think he was also, wasn't he? It says here he was in the Caribbean, but I think he was closer to South America somewhere, as I read it. But
he could be. I read the story, but I didn't look up exactly where he was. But
and you described him as a
Jewish oligarch.
Oh, okay, music oligarch.
Music oligarch.
That's damn good, brother.
Yeah. Well, you know, we have them in the Ukraine. We might as well face up to the fact that we have them here in America, too. So, you know, but the thing is, there was a firestorm of protests. The Gentiles rose up. He had to delete his Instagram account. Now, that's punishment.
That's serious stuff.
Yeah, that's serious punishment. And, you know, it just wanted to say that throughout history, the peasants have often revolted after ostentatious displays of wealth by Jewish merchants and financiers during times of depression. Mm-hmm. And then we have the Brooklyn Hasidic hoarder, Baruch Feldman, 43, in Borough Park, Brooklyn. FBI investigated and arrested him after they discovered 8 pallets of surgical masks, 80,000 masks. He sold one doctor 1,000 masks for $12,000, 700% profit. He had stockpiles of all kinds of things, Purell, Clorox, cleaning and surgical supplies.
They're always thinking ahead, aren't they?
Yeah. And
then China was doing the same thing, let's be honest.
And then when the FBI agents came within a few feet to talk to him, he coughed on him and said, "I have the virus," which is a tactic that we also find being used in Israel. You know, in Israel, the big difference between Israel and America is in Israel they actually have freedom of speech. And the Israelis can, you know, they can argue with each other freely. They can blame each other for what's going on. Not like in America where you can't, you know, talk realistically about the effect that the chosen people have on our lives. So the Israeli Orthodox Jews have also been coughing on the Israeli police and other defense forces that are trying to enforce social distancing. And the Orthodox are resisting the social distancing. One video that was circulating in Israel had a couple of rabbis on it. They're saying that Orthodox Jews should not worry about the coronavirus as the benevolent Father looks after his children. The corona is for the goyim, not for the people of Israel.
Uh-huh.
But
I knew that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't seem to work out that way because everywhere we have the Orthodox, we have a record number of new coronavirus cases, and there's several towns that you wouldn't be able to find on a map of Israel, if you could even find Israel on the map. But then
I know where Israel is.
Yeah, I know. But, you know...
Are you talking to our listeners?
Yeah, I'm talking to your listeners.
Okay.
I mean, how many people know that how much money we give to this country, and can you really locate it on the map or not? But anyway, Hasidic Jews attend yeshiva school, and they also go back and forth between Israel and Crown Heights, Brooklyn yeshiva school. And the Orthodox communities in New York City are
probably not as much these days.
Heavily infected. And so in Lakewood, New Jersey, for example, a town in New Jersey of 110,000, there are 438 positive COVID-19, which is way more than the average in New Jersey. And it's because of all the Jewish weddings of 50 people or more. So the mayor is a WASP Democrat of that town, but he's very upset. But anyway...
he did an intervention or two, didn't he?
He tried to. Yeah, they're trying to reduce the number by people. But what's interesting about this story, this was published in NewJersey.com on April 1st, is that the story reflects everything that we just how these stories are covered in the press, because we don't have freedom of speech, so they have to be very careful. So. In other words, so whenever a Gentile starts questioning Jewish behavior as obnoxious or dangerous or evil or wrong or something,
you mean like you and I?
Yeah, the press has to go to a Jewish scholar. So they went to Professor Lipstadt, and a professor of Jewish studies at Emory University, and she said, well, the first mitzvah is to be fruitful and multiply. That's the first commandment in Genesis. And then she said, but here's what she said next. Because of the Holocaust, Jews feel the responsibility to start families, and they're loath to delay weddings. Mm-hmm. So when you say the Holocaust, what do you really mean? Because of the Gentiles. Right?
We're responsible.
Yeah, we're responsible.
Okay.
That's always the case. We're responsible. So, and that's the usual propaganda path, the obnoxious Jewish behavior, Gentile questioning of the behavior, ask the Jewish expert.
So that's the sequence.
Ask the Jewish expert. No Gentile or dissident Jewish counterpoint is allowed. Just ask one Jewish expert, and the result 100% of the time is blame the Holocaust, i.e. the Gentiles.
Voila.
That's how propaganda works in America.
It's simple that way, and we can move on.
Yeah. Now, we also have the stories surrounding Jared Kushner.
Oh, we do?
Some of them are calling him President Kushner. But anyway, Jared Kushner and the Kosher Nostra. If you remember, Jared's father was put into prison for real estate fraud. And apparently he's got made a lot of contacts in there. And so the president has put him in charge of the PPE, the surgical vestments, the ventilators and masks for the U.S. federal government. And he raised quite a few eyebrows when he said that these emergency items that are needed to fight the coronavirus, that they're actually solely the property of the federal government and not necessarily the states.
Kushner doesn't understand federalism.
No. And then there is a news report that came out that 1 million masks were sent by the U.S. to Israel. Now, that news story has since been altered to say that it was the Israeli Office of Procurement in New York City, so the role of the U.S. is made unclear by that. But at any rate, we're getting reports of federal confiscation of the PPEs, the respirators meant for other countries, and even different states being confiscated or outbid. Even on the tarmac, we have reports from different countries that say they had the order in place.
Negotiating on the tarmac?
Yeah, the plane was ready to take off, and then the Fed showed up with cash and bought all the masks.
Wow, yeah.
So,
well, for the federal government to be that efficient?
Yes. It has to be the Kosher Nostra. Yeah. And also because of the wars, that we've been fighting for the sake of Israel and for oil, but both of them go together. I'm not saying it's not for the oil. I'm not saying it's not for Israel. They both go together. So we have not upgraded our strategic reserves since 2010.
They're real cheap right now.
Yeah, and some of them are rotten. Mm-hmm. They've been arriving to different states with some of the masks and other items rotted and no good. And since since the H1N1 virus that caused 300,000 hospitalizations.
Don't you mean N1H1?
N1H1 or N1H1, I think it is. Okay.
Biden referred to N1H1.
Okay. I don't want to be wrong. I'm sure Biden is right. Despite numerous warnings about the possibility of another virus, no updates of the reserves in 10 years. And so, we've been left without it. And when we come back to the show, we're going to have another couple of stories about the military and about a possible non-interventionist being appointed by Trump to a Pentagon post.
Boy, wouldn't that be nice?
Yes.
I'm telling you.
Small town quality and care with today's most advanced technology in the truck and automobile repair industry. It's exactly what you'll find.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Are you shy and don't want to talk on the air? Text us your questions or comments to 775-237-2266. Now, back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Brendan Trainor, and my co-host is Leland Faegre. Also in the news this last week is the incident between Admiral Brent Crozier of the USS, I think they call it Theodore Roosevelt, the aircraft carrier.
Nuclear
aircraft carrier. Yeah. And former Pentagon lobbyist, now acting Secretary of the Navy since November, Thomas Modly, who called Crozier stupid and naive because he sent out an email regarding the condition of the crew, which is heavily infected with COVID-19.
Quite a number of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
and he himself has now been diagnosed.
Yes, he is diagnosed. So Modly email made several false accusations against Crozier, and he had also claimed that the admiral's email left the crew demoralized because they knew what Modly had been doing to get them what they needed. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. So all those viral videos of the sailors cheering Crozier when he left the ship after he'd been fired
had something to do with it.
Yeah, that was really, they were really cheering Modly because they knew what he was doing behind the scenes to help them.
Absolutely. Well, anyway, that didn't last too long, did it?
No, it didn't.
And that came up in the briefings, and the next thing you know, he's gone. So,
right.
A very interesting development. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, but Modly's rant is, that he went into shows quite a few, something about the mindset of the neocons in Washington.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
First of all, the media has an agenda that may require suppression. We have to keep an eye on that media. Mm-hmm. And then it also shows how anti-Chinese rhetoric has reached dangerous new levels. According to Modly, we are not technically at war with China, but the only reason we are dealing with this now is because authoritarian regimes called China was not forthcoming about this virus. They put the world at risk to protect themselves and to protect their reputations.
But that's as far as it went. I mean, if he left it there, he'd have been fine. But he didn't leave it there.
No. Well, I don't know if he'd be fine either, because the Chinese reported the virus on December 31st to the World Health Organization, and they had sequenced the first DNA by January 10th.
They had known earlier in December that it was transmutable between people.
That's debatable.
Well, no, we've seen the correspondence, so we know that's there.
Well, again, there's a lot of things we see that we put the wrong twist on.
No, they clearly lied about this. They're very concerned about their reputation, and they didn't want this thing going. I mean, Breitbart is reporting this morning that they fired up a casket in Wuhan, and there was somebody in it that was alive.
Oh.
I mean, they're very careless people. I mean, they have a history of slaughter. Let's face it. The regime has come from the Mao model, which brutally slaughtered 60 million of their own people.
Right.
So
yes, but they're not.
The regime is not a nice group of folks.
No, they have a different system of government, that's for sure.
Yeah,
But
that's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, well, the fact is that they as long as you don't criticize the Chinese government, there's a good deal of freedom in China.
Right, exactly. If you don't do those things,
right, right. Well, which is the same thing can be said about Saddam Hussein's regime. The same thing can be said about a lot of different regimes, even some in the West.
Yeah, but for some reason, there's this reticence to describe China in this way, and that's in fact the way it is there, even among the inner circle.
Where, in Washington?
No, in China.
In China? Mm-hmm. That they don't self-describe themselves as authoritarian?
They do not self-describe themselves.
I wonder what government would.
But you see, this is what is lost on the conversation, is that they were implicitly involved in this conspiracy to conceal the nature of the virus, which is something, and this is notwithstanding whether that regime knew of or has this understanding, and that they've been proselytizing that we, in fact, brought the virus over there. And that's a discussion for perhaps another
well,
day.
Yeah, that's indeterminate. But
yeah.
We don't know where the virus came from.
What were 350 Americans doing in Wuhan?
Well, they were supposedly there for the games, but they were so bad that the Chinese were calling them the soy sauce soldiers.
I mean, that stuff's got to stop. You know, this mingling, this sharing of military correspondence, and you know, they come over here and they take part in our games sometimes, and they observe, and all that stuff's got to change. And you know, it has served the interests of our enemies for them to come over here and observe. Enough of that.
We're not at war with China.
No, and we should never have an occasion to be at war were it not for the fact that we are sharing too much with them. They're stealing our technology and intellectual property, and that's got to stop. And it is stopping. Actually.
It is stopping.
But it's because of the exposition of this event, this historical chapter of human history, that it's going to stop. It would have gone on if it was Hillary in the Oval Office.
Yeah, but what exactly is the end game? We're going to get into Colonel McGregor later, and probably in the next segment.
Well, no, he would say what I'm saying. Oh, absolutely.
No, I have his quotes here.
Yeah, do it. Let's go to McGregor.
All right. So, but first of all, I want to say that Maudley was saying that if this ship were in combat, which it's not in combat, and hypersonic missiles were coming at you, you would be pretty effing scared, and he didn't use effing.
I loved how he used hypersonic in his description. Yeah.
Because that's what they are. They're hypersonic.
Right.
So he revealed that the Pentagon is pretty effing scared about the new Russian-Chinese hypersonic missiles, but they won't admit that it's rendered the 12 enormous aircraft carrier squadrons that we have, they're as obsolete as a World War I battleship because of these things, and we won't admit it. We're continuing to pour money down that drain hole, and they're not going to be effective.
As we're always fighting the last war. You know,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's. But a lot of this is just about hype and an acknowledgement of, we're better than you, and our systems are better than yours, and it's never really legitimized in battle.
What is that legitimized in battle?
Our prowess, our military prowess.
Oh yeah, no,
it's
no,
never.
We're supposed to be the greatest military in the world that's never won a war since World War II.
Yeah, it's all rhetorical. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, what we're all right. So here we are. We're going to Colonel McGregor. So yesterday there was a report in the Washington Free Beacon that Rand Paul and Tucker Carlson are lobbying Trump to obscure what they called an obscure Colonel McGregor, to replace John Rood in the Pentagon. And he would have to be confirmed by Congress. So that's the controversy.
That's the problem.
Yes, exactly. So they cite his view on Jews, in quotes, but actually he specifically said he wasn't talking about all Jews. He's talking about the neocons. In a 2012 article, making decisions beneficial to a foreign power not necessarily good for the American people and the United States.
Right.
And then he has clarified again that that's not all Jews but the neocons and their fellow travelers. and the cyanine. And if you don't know what a cyanine is, it's like the Hollywood producers. There are at least 2 Hollywood producers that were asked by Israel to steal government secrets from us, and they immediately did so. They
Shocking.
Left their straight jobs or on the side where they were working in Hollywood. They sold these secrets and sent them to Israel. But anyway, and that's called a cyanine. It's like a Jewish Minuteman, somebody who's ready to spring forward when asked. Mm-hmm. So McGregor on China. China's economic power is a threat to some extent, but not a military threat at all. They have about 300 nuclear missiles and have not added to them at all recently. I don't see China as an aggressive expansionist military power. I don't sign on to that interpretation. And then speaking about Iran...
He didn't say they didn't want to be one.
No, but they...
Well, that's the point. That's the point that... what's the guy, Gordon Chang and Michael Pillsbury are making in their books that are now out. The 100-year marathon from Pillsbury, who was a former member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and Chang is effectively mirroring the same subject matter. It isn't what they've done; it's what they're thinking about doing.
Well, you can't go after every country because what you believe, what they're thinking about doing.
Correct, but you have a pattern of stealing copyrighted material. Intellectual property.
The Chinese are called the Jews of Asia.
So
they are businessmen.
But they were
allowed
to do it. They were allowed to do it.
Yeah, because they have 1.5 billion customers.
Right.
Do you know what Rockefeller did in the 19th century? He paid for missionaries to go to China so he could sell them little votive lamps with kerosene.
He started Earth Day in the United Nations. He donated the property where the UN sits.
Well, I'm talking about the old Rockefeller in the 19th century.
But the point is, yes, they're all monopolistic thinkers.
Right.
Yeah. So they're always thinking about money, but there's something more than interesting for them, something more important for them, and that is power. They have the money already. It's the power they're looking for. And it's the world government mindset.
I think that is just another neocon hawkish mindset.
No, it's not. It has nothing to do with it. I hate neocons.
The Chinese, they're doing the same thing they say about Belt and Road. They say, don't join the Belt and Road because the Chinese are just going to rope you in, and then when they're ready, they'll pull the noose on you. That's what they're saying, that the Belt and Road is just a Chinese con to get you in debt to China. Well, we're completely ignoring that that's exactly what the International Monetary Fund does. It's an Anglo-Jewish banking association that loans money to these governments, and then when they can't pay it back, they impose austerity on them.
Right, exactly.
And that's what we do, not the Chinese.
Well, when you say we, who do you mean by we?
I mean...
These are the globalists, that are in charge of this stuff. And that's not an American mindset at all.
But it is part of it now. I mean...
Well, no, it has been sort of laced throughout our recent history. But
yes. No. Well, we lost the American...
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your basement. There's a pair of overalls that overall you're not so into anymore. A perfectly good laptop...
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now, back to the show.
Hello, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. And we were talking a little bit here about different things and showing you that there's... and this show, we welcome debate, because we were having one just a minute ago. And
I wanted to get something in here real quick before we continue the segment. The CDC is loosening guidelines for some exposed to the virus, according to Drudge here. So it's just
what are they doing?
I think this is moving faster than we are realizing by the events we're watching or listening to.
Okay.
I think there's going to be some very quick changes to the lockdown.
Okay.
In some quarters, in some parts of the country. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, but I think the worst is over.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think it is.
So
what were you looking for?
I've got it here, but I don't know whether I wasn't prepared for this. So give me a minute here.
Well, we're prepared for everything else.
It says this is an article from the Asia Review of March 24th, and it says the cover-up is largely a false narrative that was initially propagated by the New York Times and The Guardian, and it says leaked cables.
The cover-up of
the Chinese that the Chinese covered up the virus.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And everything. One official says these talking points about the cover-up and it's about leaked cables, like Leland said, that everything is about China. We're being told to try and get this messaging out. And then they have a timeline here, and we can't go into it here because I'd have to read the timeline. We can't do that. But
well, if you're watching
the main claims of a Chinese cover-up are China's arrested the whistleblower. First of all, he wasn't a whistleblower. He was on a private chat group with a few of his friends.
Are you talking about the doctor that identified the virus?
Yeah. There have been 7 confirmed cases. He called it SARS, and they didn't arrest him or anything. He did apparently have to go to a police station for a couple of hours, but he wasn't. He wasn't arrested.
Well, they didn't want him talking about it,
right? But that's
and other doctors
he didn't have the facts.
Other doctors have gone missing that wanted to talk about it.
I don't know that we're talking about.
Oh yeah. There's a woman in particular.
China issued gag order and instructions to destroy samples on January 3rd. Well, they'd already notified the WHO by December 31st.
Oh well, then I feel much better about the notification.
Well, the WHO is a worthless organization, just like some of our medical organizations are. But one moment,
they were just running public relations for China, which is what you'd expect from the United Nations.
Right. And, that thing about Taiwan was bad. I mean, somebody talked about how he
going in and pulling people from their homes and all that stuff?
No, we talked about how the WHO spokesman, it wasn't the Irish guy, it was another WHO spokesman, was on Skype or whatever with a reporter, and the reporter mentioned Taiwan's effort to combat COVID-19, and the WHO spokesman just refused to say Taiwan. He said some Chinese provinces.
Oh, right,
yes.
Exactly, yeah. Like it didn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Because in China's mind, it doesn't exist.
Right, all right. One moment.
Chang was rolling over in his grave.
And then they're saying about human-to-human transmission.
Right. That was
limited human-to-human transmission between close contacts is not the same as declaring it human-to-human transmissible.
But there was no warning at that point. See, that should have been part of the discussion, even if there was no justification for describing it in the way that it should have been described in hindsight.
Maybe, but maybe not either. There was only when there was widespread infection to medical staff on the 20th of January that there was sufficient evidence to declare it human to human.
Okay, then early December, when they realized they had a problem, they started trying to secure medical materials to adjust to the circumstances of the virus.
Yeah.
We know that from the cables.
Yeah. Well, again, the cables.
They were calling all over the world.
Yeah. We don't know that for sure.
I think it's very clear that that's what they were doing by their behavior. And then in hindsight, it's very clear, and that's usually how you can prove conspiracy is in hindsight, because you go back and see, well, what did they do then, and what was the pattern, the sequence, and all of that. And so it's going to be – I don't think there's any question about what they were doing there. And that's why I have trouble supporting Marco Rubio generally, but I think he's right about this. You got to support your people when they're right,
Well, we'll see where this goes, but I don't think it's going to go very far.
Well, that's the problem. The Democrats won't support it.
Right. But the fact is whether it's true or not. I have reservations about whether this is all true.
I don't think there's any question.
And I'd have to go through this article here and go through all the links and everything. Obviously, we don't have time to do that.
But as it relates to the trade agreement, that's my concern. How is this guy going to negotiate in the spirit of the art of the deal to save that trade agreement if we're going to charge them for the virus?
Okay.
That's the dynamic we're dealing with here.
Right. And the thing is, I know from the healthcare debates that we had over Obamacare that different countries have different ways of putting in statistics. A British Chancellor of the Exchequer once said that the government depends on statistics, and they create all kinds of sophisticated graphs and models, as we're seeing now, based on these statistics. But when it really comes down to it, all these statistics rely on is the night watchman on the beat, who puts down whatever he darn well wants.
Who's there at the time?
Yeah. So that's why government statistics are never going to be as accurate as markets, and
it's the same modeling that they use for climate change. I mean, it's absolutely reprehensible that these people should be in the unemployment line.
Who?
I don't see
half of Washington should be on the unemployment line, if not 90%.
These modeling people, I mean, what the hell are they doing? Effectively playing. Effectively a conspirator to a particular global design.
Right.
In this case, a virus, but in the case of Biden's discussion this morning of an existential threat from climate change, he's trying to woo Bernie's crowd over to himself. I mean, this is the same thing, and these are just modeling discussions that are never brought to the fore in the dialogue. So these kids, they don't know anything.
And there's also an element of fraud involved in them too, not just poor modeling based on insufficient data, but actually actual fraud, deliberate fraud, like the polar bears.
Oh yeah, we've caught them many times. Yeah.
There's so many instances. Yeah, the poor polar bears, and yet when you really look at the statistics, the polar bear are growing, not shrinking.
West Palm Beach is going to be underwater. I mean, I mean, it's hysterically funny.
I know.
If it wasn't so serious that they're passing this off as truth,
Yeah, and some people are buying it,
Yeah.
And the Green New Deal and so on. And speaking of all that, did we mention that Bernie withdrew?
Yeah, I think we touched on it because there really wasn't much of a story there because he was never going to be the nominee.
Well, sure, Bernie conceded right after Super Tuesday when he went on Seth Meyers' show, and and when he keeps saying, "I know Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a friend of mine."
You do a really good Bernie. That's damn good.
And Joe Biden is not corrupt. He's an honest man. It's the same thing with Hillary Clinton when he said, America is sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails, And, he's going to be stumping for Biden. He's going to be out there promoting
Absolutely,
Biden.
Because
you're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
Exactly right, he is.
He's a dog-faced pony soldier. Exactly right.
But, he's going to get another house out of this deal.
Oh, yeah. He's got, 2 or 3 already?
Well, remember when Bloomberg brought it up in the February debates? That he had 3 homes? and then referred to the most recent one, I guess the one that Hillary and the DNC gave him for dropping out in 2016. He called it a summer camp. Remember that?
Yeah.
I have a feeling it's not a rustic cabin.
How many homes does Hillary have? She's got at least 7 of them, doesn't she?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, she's got several mansions in America and probably some overseas,
Mm-hmm.
They probably have a suite reserved for her in Riyadh whenever she decides to visit.
Yeah, could be more than one.
Yeah. So this is what we're seeing, a lot of frustration on the progressive side because they are...
they've lost their boy.
They've lost their boy, and he deserted them. I mean, earned media is so much more better. Just ask the President Trump. Earned media is so much more better than paid media. And when they were holding that vote on Sunday...
it's cheaper.
Yeah. He could have stood up in the Senate. He could have put a hold on it. He could have did what Thomas Massey did. He could have tried to take a stand. Anybody that was serious about running for president probably would have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so he was never serious
at all. You could make a case that he was never serious. He knew damn well that the establishment was never going to draw him into the nomination.
Right. And so this whole thing is a vanity candidacy.
It is.
Exactly.
Yeah. And to draw, the young people in, their idealism of what socialism is and all that.
So he can funnel them into the Democratic Party.
And that's what he's about to do.
Yeah. And to the Democratic establishment.
Exactly.
And AOC is no longer the AOC we knew and loved right after she won her appointment. She's no longer challenging anything.
No.
Representative Omar, she's not talking about Israel anymore.
No.
They've all been put to heel by Nancy Pelosi and
Mm-hmm.
Chuck Schumer. Yeah, they are totally in their power. They can talk about peripheral social issues like giving money to illegal immigrants, but they can't talk about anything that the majority of Americans might even sign on to.
Right. If they're even there anymore. Well, anyway, that was another edition of Talking Truth to Power.